herself or of others should make her neglect aught that came to her in her child's name. She took up a pen and wrote: "The sands below the rocks, where we met you the other night. Time, afternoon church." Sunday came. "I shall not go to church this afternoon. You know the way, of course, and I trust you to go steadily by yourselves." When they came to kiss her before leaving her, according to their fond wont, they were struck by the coldness of her face and lips. "Are you not well, dear Mrs Denbigh? How cold you are!" "Yes, darling, I am well," and tears sprang into her eyes as she looked at their anxious little faces. "Go now, dears. 5 o'clock will soon be here, and then we will have tea." "And that will warm you," said they, leaving the room. "And then it will be over," she murmured. "Over!" It never came into her head to watch the girls as they disappeared down the lane on their way to church. She knew them too well to distrust their doing what they were told. She sat still, her head bowed on her arms for a few minutes, and then rose up and went to put on her walking things. Some thoughts impelled her to sudden haste. She crossed the field by the side of the house, ran down the steep and rocky path, and was carried by the impetus of her descent far out on the level sands, but not far enough for her intent. Without looking to the right hand or to the left, where comers might be seen, she went forwards to the black posts, which, rising above the heaving waters, marked where the fishermen's nets were laid. She went straight towards this place, and hardly stinted her pace even where the wet sands were glittering with the receding waves. Once there, she turned round, and, in a darting glance, saw that, as yet, no one was near. She was perhaps half a mile or more from the grey, silvery rocks which sloped away into brown moorland, interspersed with a field here and there of golden waving corn. Behind were purple hills, with sharp, clear outlines touching the sky. A little on one side from where she stood, she saw the white cottages and houses which formed the village of Abermouth, scattered up and down; and on a windy hill, about a mile inland, she saw the little grey church, where even now many were worshipping in peace. "Pray for me," she sighed out as this object caught her eye. And now, close under the heathery fields, where they fell softly down and touched the sands, she saw a figure moving in the direction of the great shadow made by the rocks, going towards the very point where the path from Eagle's Crag came down to the shore. "It is he!" said she to herself, and she turned round and looked seaward. The tide had turned; the waves were slowly receding, as if loth to lose the hold they had, so lately, and with such swift bounds, gained on the yellow sands. The eternal moan they have made since the world began filled the ear, broken only by the skirl of the grey sea birds as they alighted in groups on the edge of the waters, or as they rose up with their measured balancing motion, and the sunlight caught their white breasts. There was no sign of human life to be seen; no boat, or distant sail, or near shrimper. The black posts there were all that spoke of men's work or labour. Beyond a stretch of the waters, a few pale grey hills showed like films, their summits clear, though faint, their bases lost in a vapoury mist. On the hard echoing sands, and distinct from the ceaseless murmur of the salt sea waves, came footsteps, nearer, nearer. Very near they were when Ruth, unwilling to show the fear that rioted in her heart, turned round and faced Mr Donne. He came forward, with both hands extended. "This is kind, my own Ruth," said he. Ruth's arms hung down motionless at her sides. "What, Ruth, have you no word for me?" "I have nothing to say," said Ruth. "Why, you little revengeful creature! And so I am to explain all before you will even treat me with decent civility?" "I do not want explanations," said Ruth, in a trembling tone. "We must not speak of the past. You asked me to come in Leonard's, in my child's name, and to hear what you had to say about him." "But what I have to say about him relates to you even more. And how can we talk about him without recurring to the past? That past, which you try to ignore (I know you cannot do it in your heart), is full of happy recollections to me. Were you not happy in Wales?" he said, in his tenderest tone. But there was no answer, not even one faint sigh, though he listened intently. "You dare not speak. You dare not answer me. Your heart will not allow you to prevaricate, and you know you were happy." Suddenly Ruth's beautiful eyes were raised to him, full of lucid splendour, but grave and serious in their expression, and her cheeks, heretofore so faintly tinged with the tenderest blush, flashed into a ruddy glow. "I was happy. I do not deny it. Whatever comes, I will not blench from the truth. I have answered you." "And yet," replied he, secretly exulting in her admission, and not perceiving the inner strength of what she must have been conscious before she would have dared to make it, "and yet, Ruth, we are not to recur to the past. Why not? If it was happy at the time, is the recollection of it so miserable to you?" He tried once more to take her hand, but she quietly stepped back. "I came to hear what you had to say about my child," said she, beginning to feel very weary. "Our child, Ruth." She drew herself up, and her face went very pale. "What have you to say about him?" asked she, coldly. "Much!" exclaimed he. "Much that may affect his whole life; but it all depends upon whether you will hear me or not." "I listen." "Good heavens, Ruth! You will drive me mad. Oh, what a changed person you are from the sweet, loving creature you were! I wish you were not so beautiful." She did not reply, but he caught a deep, involuntary sigh. "Will you hear me if I speak, though I may not begin at once to talk of this boy? A boy of whom any mother, any parent, might be proud. I could see that, Ruth. I have seen him. He looked like a prince in that cramped, miserable house, and with no earthly advantages. It is a shame he should not have every kind of opportunity laid open before him." There was no sign of maternal ambition on the motionless face, though there might be some little spring in her heart, as it beat quick and strong at the idea of the proposal she imagined he was going to make of taking her boy away to give him the careful education she had often craved for him. She should refuse it, as she would everything else which seemed to imply that she acknowledged a claim over Leonard; but yet sometimes, for her boy's sake, she had longed for a larger opening, a more extended sphere. "Ruth, you acknowledge we were happy once. There were circumstances which, if I could tell you them all in detail, would show you how, in my weak, convalescent state, I was almost passive in the hands of others. Ah, Ruth, I have not forgotten the tender nurse who soothed me in my delirium. When I am feverish, I dream that I am again at Llandew, in the little old bedchamber, and you, in white, which you always wore then, you know, flitting about me.